and the rest are spread between water and rail. So in the morning, when you go to work, on average, we clock about 18 kilometers per hour, which is less than the recommended 30 kilometers for a competitive economy. And in the evening, we clock about 19 kilometers per hour, and that's because of peak spreading. Now, what are the challenges that we have in Lagos today, and why are we experiencing congestion? First of all, a lot of our people are captive to either public transport or their cars, and that's because they don't have options. So we do not have many options, so we don't have the rail working yet. Water transport is just ramping up a little bit. The bus system is very informal, and we're trying to formalize it in such a way that people can plan their journeys. The second reason why we're experiencing congestion also is because when you look at the configuration of our roads, so let me just give you an example. Most of our junctions were developed or were built about 20, 30 years ago, and then they were built for a certain demand. And when you look at the demand now in comparison to when they were built, the demand has ramped up by over 100%. So most of our junctions can't cope with the demand. And that's why most of our roundabouts are not efficient, and they have become bottlenecks. And that's why you see us taking some of them out so that we can signalize them. But that's also a challenge for us. The other challenge is the fact that even the public transport is not properly regulated. And so we don't have a good number of people that ply certain routes. So, I mean, a downfall driver who is supposed to ply maybe Okoko Michael can ply another route some other day because it's just profitable. So we don't have a balance, a good mix of downfalls or public transport going around to ensure that people move seamlessly from one point to the other. Also, when you look at the soft measures, such as the way we park indiscriminately on the roads, even public transport pick up passengers at any point. So we have a situation where even the capacity that we have is not well managed. And this is where we need to look at, okay, what kind of engineering solution can we bring to the table to ensure that even what we have at the moment is efficiently managed, and going forward, because of the population explosion in Lagos, looking at a much more sustainable way of moving people from one point to the other. And that's where your rapid mass transit comes into play. But I understand that rapid mass transit will take medium to long, I mean, that's a medium to long-term solution. And the question is, what can we do now to ensure that we can move people seamlessly from one point to the other? So first of all, I've talked about the reconfiguration of our junctions. So we're taking out some of the roundabouts, which are not efficient, and then we're signalizing them. And then we now need to ensure that we synchronize them in such a way that the traffic light in one junction, I mean, maybe at a particular junction that is linked to another junction, they're actually communicating in such a way that, you know, like the other one doesn't become a bottleneck once you solve one. So we're looking at introducing the scoot system, developing a control room where our traffic lights are coordinated in such a way that we can manage the whole traffic. The second one is, whether we like it or not, our drainage system is a problem. Once it rains, because the water is not being able to, I mean, we can't disperse the water easily. We need to look at ways in which we reconstruct the drainage, and ways in which we clean the drainage system and then optimize it. The other one is the roadside barriers installation. When you go to places like Kitu or Jota, for example, you find out that people, rather than use the pedestrian bridge, want to cross, and they themselves cause congestion. So we have to find engineering ways in which we separate pedestrians from motorists. So looking at roadside barrier installation is very important. And then the other one is the parking strategy that we're trying to introduce in Lagos. So for example, you have different tiers of government responsible for parking. You have the local government, you have the state government, and then to an extent, maybe federal government, but that's to a very small extent. And so what you experience is that when people go to Lagos and then they want to park, they pay to the local government, and then they have to pay to area boys who say they represent states, etc. So the whole thing is not well coordinated. And what we're trying to do is to develop a central parking system.
You are done.
Sorry, hello? Hello?
Yeah, hello, we can hear you, but please, everyone, mute your mic if you are not speaking, please. Thank you.
Okay, someone said I was done, so I thought I was done. All right, okay, so basically we're trying to centralize the parking system in such a way that we can control the amount of vehicles that come into Lagos, especially the island. And, we encourage where people can park and so that they don't park indiscriminately on the road. We've also set up what we call an abandoned committee, abandoned committee, where there are a lot of vehicles that are abandoned on the road, and we have to go around and clear them. So these are little low-hanging fruits that can be deployed to actually free up our roads and to ensure that traffic move seamlessly from one point to the other. Now, let me move to the medium term also. It's important that we alleviate congestion on the road. Our road network cater for 97% of all trips generated in Lagos. Water transport takes about 1%, and then the rest is shared between rail and then whatever you've got. And that's pretty poor for a city like Lagos. So we're ramping up. I mean, we have LASTMA who will talk about what they're doing in water transportation, but we're ramping up our water transport system. So the Lagos state government has invested in vessels, and then we're looking to the private sector to actually participate with the Lagos state government so that we can ramp up the mode share on our waterways to about 5% from about less than 1%. The BLT, we started with the BLT from mile 12 to CMS. We've extended it to Ikorodu. We are now developing another one from Oshodi to Abule Egba, and then we need to develop more. Then we have another one from, I think it's Babs and more, all the way to Trade Fair. So we're beginning to ramp up the BLT, and the idea behind the BLT is that we move people in mass from one point to the other. So a BLT would take out about, should I say 30 cars or to 35 cars, because the capacity of a BLT is 70. Average occupancy on our roads is about 2. So if we can deploy more BLT and make it attractive, then we can get a more shift from cars to BLT. So BLT is another way in which we can decongest our roads, and we're beginning to ramp up the infrastructure there. But the big elephant is the rail, and that Lagos State needs a rail network. And I understand that will take a bit of time, but Lagos State will, in the next 10 to 20 years, develop 6 rail line and 1 monorail, and that would significantly affect the way our network functions. Now, in saying all this, there is something that is key to everything that I've said, and that is integration. Integration, if you don't have integration, everything that I've said in terms of public transport will not work. So we need to make public transport attractive so that people like myself can use public transport. And what do I mean by integration? We need to ensure that we have a common ticketing system. So there's no point paying for the various modes. So each time I enter a different mode of transport, I pay, and that makes public transport expensive. But once you have a single card that you can use to access the various public transport, that will make it attractive, that will make it cheaper, and people will be willing to use it. Also, the other one is to make sure that the various modes of transport have their timetable integrated in such a way that you move seamlessly from one mode to the other. So there's no point taking a BLT and then I now want to change to the rail and then I have to wait 30 minutes or 40 minutes. The maximum time you have to wait is 5 minutes. So there needs to be that integration, that timetable integration. The other one is to ensure that people have access to information. So that's information integration, so that when I'm at home and I sit down, I can plan my journey if I want to go from A to B from home. And then once I go out, I then begin to execute what I have planned. So the information that comes for the various modes has to be standardized in such a way that they can be integrated and then people understand them. And then the key one is location integration. I understand that a lot of communities in Lagos are excluded from the network. And so Lagos State has developed a strategic transport master plan where in future, every community will be within 5 minutes of a train station, bus station, or maybe a waterway station. 5 minutes, so everything, 500 meters. That's what I meant to say, 500 meters, so that everybody has access to the network. And once everybody has access to the network, everybody has a chance of engaging in some kind of economic activities, etc. So that is very important. And then the last one is to ensure that we have land use and transport integration. So for example, when I build a rail line, we would like to encourage industries like employment industries to locate along the corridor so that when people get off the train or maybe the BLT corridor, when they get off, they can simply walk to their final destination. And that ensures that there is good integration between the land use as well as the transportation. And the last one I want to talk about, which I believe Lamata will talk about a little bit, is the last mile. We can build all this infrastructure, but if you don't take care of the last mile, so when people get to the final point of the network, how do they get to their final destination? Which is where the small buses and then non-motorized transport infrastructure comes into play. So once you're able to deploy these various modes of transport, you give people options, and you will see that people will simply drop their cars, and then we can decongest the road, and then people will still move and be able to do their daily activities. Every day. So that is what I want to say for the moment, and then I will still come back and talk more. Once I allow the panel to react to what I've said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah,
we appreciate the insight you have given into what Lagos State is doing as regards traffic management. To go ahead, we're going to have other panel discussants to give in their own contribution. And after that, we'll go into question and answers. So we're going to be calling in the panel discussants one after the other. I don't know if Engineer Mrs. Abimbola Akinjo is ready to speak. We're giving each of the panel discussants between 5 to 7 minutes each to give their contribution, because there are lots of questions and answers to be answered, and that will give you more time to go deeper into this topic. Engineer Mrs. Abimbola Akinjo.
Thank you very much. Yes, following on from what the Honorable Commissioner has been talking to us about, I think we can all see why Lagos is congested, why we have a traffic situation. The Honorable Commissioner quite rightly said that 97% of our trips are carried out on our roads. Lagos is a city with 20 million people. and most Lagosians are out daily. So when you imagine that, even if we said 60% of our population is on the road, and 97% of that portion, they're using the roads, there is nothing we can do but have congestion. That will be our reality until we change the way in which we travel. And I think the Honorable Commissioner made it very clear, the only solution, the only long-term solution to congestion in Lagos is alternative modes of transportation. That is what will free us from what we all encounter daily. Now, we must be careful here. Let's understand that traffic will always exist. When you look at developed countries, even though they have alternative forms of transport, there is traffic. The challenge we have is the fact that we don't have choices. So if you choose to sit on the road, that's a choice you will be making when you have an alternative. But for us in Lagos, we don't have an alternative, so we're not even making that choice. So from Lamata's perspective, I guess, we are charged with bringing about various forms of public transportation. We're looking at the rail, we're looking at the bus systems. The bus systems for now is probably, when we look at it, are low-hanging fruit. Like the Honorable Commissioner said, we have in existence at the moment the one BRT system that functions. We have another one that we're about to complete come the end of April. Well, COVID, all things being equal, without COVID, we were due to complete end of April. So we're looking at least the middle of the year that Oshodi-Abule-Egba would be ready, and we are already talking to operators who would operate on that route. There is a route that we have that we are also working on, which is the route along the Lagos-Badagry Expressway. We have 13 BRT lines within our Lagos Master Plan. And I think for us, the continuous rolling out of those BRT systems will go a long way in helping bring a solution to transportation or to traffic. Also, Lagos is about to embark, or Lamata is about to embark on the implementation of what we see as our QBSs, quality bus routes. For us, those are ensuring that we have what will feed. So the whole bus system should be feeding into each other. So we have the BRTs, we will have the quality bus routes that will feed into the BRTs. And like the commissioner spoke about, we also have the last mile. So when we have all these buses, we have to think about what is it that will be closest to the people's residence or where they work. And that's what the last mile will do. Last mile will take cognizance of where people are going to end up, where their trip will end, and that last mile buses, those last mile buses will provide that service. So from the bus system, those are the systems that we have. But obviously we can't do, we've just said it now, we can't do all of our transportation on road. It's just not viable. So from Lamata's perspective, we are actively developing our rail. The blue line is due to be completed by where to go operational last quarter of 2022. We're also working on the red line. The red line, we intend to share the Lagos-Ibadan rail track, the one that the federal are doing at the moment. So the first phase of that, the red line will go from Agbado to Oyingbo. And we will integrate that Oyingbo rail terminal with the bus terminal that we're building at Oyingbo. My commissioner spoke about integration. That will be what will make it attractive for people to leave their cars at home. If I am going to Lagos Island, for instance, and I know that when I leave my house in Agbado, I take a train all the way to Oyingbo, and there is nothing that takes me from Oyingbo to, and I am still stuck. No matter how attractive Lagos to Oyingbo is to me, I will not leave my car at home. But if I know that when I get to Oyingbo, there is something else that will take me from Oyingbo to Marina, and from Marina, I have last mile buses that travel around central business districts of Lagos, then there's no need for me to have my car, because all of my transport needs will be taken care of by public transport. For every car we take off the road, we're trying to reduce traffic. So the rail line for red will travel from Agbado to Oyingbo. That's the first phase. The second phase will go from Oyingbo to Marina. The blue line will go from Mile 2, the first phase that we're building at the moment, that is due to be operational in 2022, last quarter, will go from Mile 2 to Marina. And the last phase will be from Mile 2 back to Okumaiko. Now, part of what we're doing with these QBSs is to also build interchanges. The commissioner spoke about ensuring that people can go from one mode to the other. And we will have specific transport interchanges that will have the majority of the public forms of public transport that we have. So Marina is a major hub, for instance. Marina will have bus services, it will have the BRT, it will have the the blue and the red line will terminate there. The green line, when it starts, will start from Marina as well. So we will cater to every transport mode in the majority of these transport interchanges. So Marina is going to be the first transport interchange that we will build, and it will have all forms. It will also have water transportation. And the second one we will build in the next 2 to 3 years would be the Mile 2 interchange. Mile 2 interchange will also have every form of transportation there. There will be the BRT, there will be the regular bus services, there will be rail, there will be water transportation. So from Lamata's perspective, we are actively working to increase the options for Lagosians. It is only when those options are first increased, next they're integrated, that we begin to give people real choices. And it is in the availability of real choices that we will make, each and every one of us will make that decision not to sit in traffic. Like I said, traffic will exist. All of us travel all over the world. Traffic exists, but it's a choice you will make. Am I choosing to sit in traffic, or am I choosing not to and to use public transport? And I can only make that choice when there are alternatives. So for us, I mean, the commissioner has spoken about all the other soft options. Our bus systems, for instance, we are now in the process of rolling out an e-ticketing system. This one we have gotten approval from EXCO for, and in the next few months, when we start what we see as our last mile services, for instance. So our bus systems, we're starting with the last mile systems. The last mile should help us when we talk about, oh, government has banned Okada. Please note that Okada was not in our master plan, but the last mile will do what Okada used to do. So these last mile buses will be the first one that we're hoping will roll out our e-ticketing system for Lagos State. And so the way we see it is when we start from the bottom, it will be so easy to propagate it all throughout all of our transport systems. So the e-ticketing system will be one that will be used on every mode of transportation that we have. On the last mile buses, on the regular buses, even on the BRTs, and when the rail comes, on the rail. On the water, we are also integrated with water. Water is working closely with Lamata. Lazo is working with us on the development of the e-ticketing system. And we will, so on the water as well, you will be able to use this e-ticketing system that we're rolling out. So from Lamata's perspective, I believe there are good times that we're looking forward to. We're looking forward to alternatives, and alternative, in our opinion, is the only solution to our traffic situation in Lagos. Thank you very much. And I hope that we will be able to come back and talk to you more.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Engineer Mrs. Abimbola Akinjo, the MD of Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority. We appreciate your contribution. To proceed on this, we have Engineer Otunba Olajide Oduyoye, the MD of Lagos State Traffic Management Authority. Go ahead, sir, please.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, just a quick point of correction. It's not MD of LASTMA, it's General Manager LASTMA, so that's GM LASTMA.
Okay,
And,
GM LASTMA. All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner, for that startup, and to Engineer Abimbola Akintayo as well. It's well laid out. The points I would like to lay out would work on 3 points in dealing with the traffic congestion in Lagos. The first one is engineering. The second one is planning in terms of like policy and urban development, which is part of planning. And the third one is attitude. So from an engineering point of view, it is quite clear that the reason why there's a lot of congestion, obviously, is the traffic movement that is being dealt with by 20 million people that need that movement in Lagos. Now, to reduce congestion and travel time, we need to reduce the intersections or to control the intersections. So if we have more express roads or more longer journeys without intersections, without hindrance from other local traffic, then the journey from one point to the other is reduced in terms of time factor. Now, someone can argue and say, in an urban development like Lagos, that could be pretty difficult. But yes, from an engineering point of view, it is not that difficult if you have the funding and the will to do it. That is why in other cities, mega cities like ours, in terms of volume of population, you even have double-decker bridges to separate traffic. So the whole idea from an engineering point of view is to find a way to separate moving traffic. Because even if you widen the roads, automatically we all know that even more roads means more vehicular movement, more cars. The issue of public transport has been seriously dealt with by the Honorable Commissioner, but we can always do others. Now, the other bit you can have from engineering point of view is junction improvement and separation of turning movements. Because right now what we have that enjoins with attitude is that a right turning traffic picks up either a head-only traffic or left-only traffic, just so they can beat other traffic on the road. And so sections. So perhaps like we have in Enugu, and we have a lot of it in Dubai, even when you have your traffic islands, you elongate the lane separation with plastic bollards, reflective, so that people are more adhered to, well, if I want to turn right, I begin to stay on the right queue, rather than form 2 lanes and begin to shunt on the front. From an engineering point of view as well, we need to have a lot more traffic signalization, because the lack of signalization at intersections, where you cannot have a traffic personnel for 24/7 like a LASTMA officer, it can create congestion. That is why sometimes even up to 10 p.m., 11 p.m., in certain areas, for example, in Lekki area, you have congestion because most of the junctions are not signalized. And then you go forward and then you think, how am I going to deal with it? Because sometimes you can predict and you may not be able to predict. If there are special events going on, like a football match, like a concert event going on in a particular area, for that weekend, for the days where they have an event, things can change drastically. During Christmas period, during Ileya period, during Easter period, when there's a complete mass movement from one point to areas where they want to have fun, you would have serious congestion. When you have a big name wedding issue, you'll have a lot of congestion. And so some of these things cannot be predicted, but you must expect when the special event it would happen. Now, from a planning point of view, moving away from the engineering, the government needs to step up in terms of like encouraging business and employment givers to spread across the state. It is not a must, or it's not supposed to be a fad that every business, every big international business entity must be situated on the island. And that's why you have so much mass movement from residential areas from the mainland going towards the island. And then this is going to change, and it's going to happen because now when you go towards the Lekki Free Trade Zone, where so many residential estates are being built, the same problem is going to happen even on the Lekki Express. It doesn't even matter whether the new coastal road is built, right? And of course, when the rail comes in. But even having said that, the balance between the movement from residential areas to employment areas is too high and it's too skewed. So this is a time where employers need to feel, okay, is it a must that I must have my business on Victoria land? Is it a must that I must have it in Lekki? Why can I not have it in Abule Egba? Why can I not have it? Because it's still the same skilled Lagosians, skilled workers that will be coming from there that will go to the work, right? And now that we have technology, it's not a must that people must go and face-to-face to go and do a business or to even transact a business. Now going on to attitude business, that one's going to be a long shot, but it's something that we need to invest in ramming it down into the throats of Nigerians or Lagosians. And we need to start from the children in school now, because if we leave them as they are, they're going to end up emulating exactly what their parents are already doing right now. And that is now not giving too much respect to other road users. The issue of indiscriminate parking comes into it. The issue of just driving against traffic is because it is felt that the enforcement level is not as strict as it's supposed to be. Everybody knows somebody who is big in the situation. So even when you go full blast in enforcement, there will always be people calling you and begging you and saying temper justice with mercy, all sorts of different things like that. And after a while, within the environment in which we're in, you tend to have a balance where you're not 100% strict. And that needs to change. And it is the attitude of the people that it is better not to constitute a nuisance in terms of causing a problem for congestion than for you to be arrested or for an agency to be paid so much money to go and do enforcement. Now we can save all this money to improve our road conditions. We can save so much money in improving the surfaces of the road, which is very important. Now I won't go into the alternative public transportation that the honorable questioner has talked about. I'm just going to say, like, the way things are, the lack of traffic lights, the lack of adequate traffic signs, it's still an impediment to traffic flow. And if the attitude and the investment on these areas is not stepped up, then it's unlikely we're going to find the kind of respite that we need from traffic congestion in Lagos. And that's my contribution for now. Obviously, as the question and answers come in, one would have a further opportunity to contribute further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. The GM, Lagos State Traffic Management Authority. Sorry about the mistake we made on the MD initially.
Okay.
So to proceed on this symposium, we have engineer Abiodun Otunola. He is the MD of Planet Project. Sir, you can take the podium.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning once again, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
Yes. Okay. I think the issue of traffic and transport issues in Lagos have been extensively dealt with by the Commissioner for Transport. So can you hear me?
Hold on, sir. Please, everyone, mute your mic, please. Everyone, please mute your mic if you are not speaking. You can go ahead, sir.
Okay. So I think the issue has been extensively dealt with by the Honorable Commissioner who look at things from the issue of policies and of course various interventions that the current administration is currently carrying out. And the MD of Lamanta did speak extensively about public transport. The MD of, the GM of LASTMA dealt more on traffic management issues, traffic signals, and so on and so forth. Well, I will provide some additional support to what these leaders in the sectors have done. I think we need to put things in perspective so that we realize how deep these issues are. About 4 years ago, we carried out a study in Lagos, and we did come to the conclusion that if you have spent 10 years in Lagos, you have indeed wasted 3 years in traffic. And some people argued with us that it wasn't true, but along the line, I think everybody's now seeing the reality that for every 10 years you spend in Lagos, 3 years have been lost to traffic. So that's to put it in proper perspective to see the kind of issue we're dealing with. And it's also not because every government after the other have not been doing something. I think the other issue that we need to add to the table is the rate of migration to Lagos. Lagos have also been a victim of its own success. So for everything that every new administration have done and people applauded, what it does is that it attracts more people into Lagos. So as at the last count, we have a situation where over 86 people move into Lagos per hour. So approximately, some people say it's about 1,500 a day, some people say 2,000 people every day, and they're not going back. So this tends to add more pressure to the current infrastructure you add in. And that's why sometimes, by the time government finish one intervention or the other, it seems as if the impact is only felt for a while. So we have to dimension this issue both from the perspective of land use, also population and migration. And because we are part of a sovereign country called Nigeria, you can't stop people from coming into Lagos. And I'm happy that the MD of Lamata have mentioned railways, buses, and all these are things that are coming up. And I can tell you, as you advertise and bring some of this project on board, is again going to attract more people to Lagos. So these are part of the issues that I think we have to look at, and how do we deal with them? Well, I think the low-hanging fruit, which has been effectively dealt with by the current administration, in my view, is the issue of the potholes. You know, Lagos currently has about 9,000 kilometers of road network. At the advent of this administration, about 45% of that has been lost to potholes. I mean, we all know this all over the state, but to the credit of the current government, a lot has been done by Public Works Department in fixing the pothole and restoring the road network to what it should be. And today, I can say confidently that at least close to 70–80% has been achieved. So relatively easier to move around within Lagos now. Of course, not downplaying the fact that the issue of the junction improvement that is being effectively dealt with, in different parts of Lagos. And I think all of that needs to be ramped up so that we can have more smooth flow. But they've spoken about all those issues. But I'll just add to some of the things that I consider that we need to dwell more on. One of them is the issue of land use in Lagos. You see, currently, most of the economic activity concentrated within VI, Lekki axis, Ikeja. So these are the two main cities that we have. And of course, if you see the direction of movement in the morning, everybody's coming toward the island. And then, of course, another significant portion is coming to Ikeja. And then the traffic tends to be in the same direction in the morning and then the same direction in the evening. So we are thinking that one of the ways to solve this problem is perhaps to introduce additional CBDs. In Lagos as a whole. So we should be thinking of CBDs in places like Ekpe, even places like Alimosho, so that people do not have to always come down to the island, in the morning. Everybody's racing in the same direction. It's almost becoming something like an ed mentality. And that's going to reduce, further requirement for demand. And of course, transportation infrastructure requirement, So that, I think, is something that we need to look at. I mean, related to that also is the issue of things like the transport infrastructure assessment studies. I know Ministry of Transport is very active in this area. But at the same time, there's still a lot more work to be done. A lot of developments are carried out in Lagos, without proper TIA, and as a consequence, you see that they are contributing significantly to the traffic problem that we have today. Most of our junctions today, you are going to see filling stations, eateries, bank branches. These are all demand generating structures. So because of that, you have lockdown, at all our junctions. So some of them are being addressed now, but I think we need to put this at the front burner. I know related to that, of course, is the parking policy. So these two must go together. It's difficult to find parking in most places within Lagos today. I know Honorable Commissioner dwelt extensively on that. That's a parking policy that is going to be unveiled very soon. I just need to emphasize that it's something that we need to come up with as quickly as possible. Parking is a problem, especially with the ban on Okada and tricycle. More people have now brought their cars on the road. And because of that, so we have more vehicles on the road, so which therefore necessitated the need for us to have more parking services to be provided. Again, related to land use, is also something in the neighborhood of Lagos partnering with Ogun State. You see, if you look at a lot of people that live within Ogun State and come into Lagos, I mean, from Sangota, from Akute, Bega side, and also from Lagos Ibadan Expressway, I'm talking of Mowe, Magboro, and so on and so forth. I think there has to be some ways by which we can, effectively reduce ridership, car ridership from that axis as much as possible. And then all these rickety vehicles, that people just bring in from nowhere, and they're difficult to regulate because they're coming from neighboring states. Something has to be done in this area, in the area of partnership in terms of transport policy, so that you have the same policy across board. If Lagos is saying this is the category of vehicle we want, other states also need to be promoting that, so that you don't transfer all those problems down to Lagos here, and then the vehicles are breaking down here and creating more problems. And then the other problem related to that also is that, like I mentioned, we don't have enough land in Lagos. So if Lagos and Ogun State are into partnership, for instance, so there's some of the development that are currently going on here. Some of this can be shifted to some of these border towns so that people can live in Ogun State and then come in and work in Lagos, even as far as Oyo State. Some of this requires some close collaboration because the pressure on Lagos land mass is just incredible, and it's going to continue. We can't stop that. As I said, we are part of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You can't stop people from migrating. But if you have some development partnership, I know there was a time the two governors mentioned something about Lagos-Ogun Border Commission. I think within that border commission, transport and traffic issues should be given a very, very high priority, so that Lagos is not just solving its own problem and other people are dumping their own issue on Lagos and further compounding the issues that we're going to face. So on that one, it has to be the issue of traffic issue, transport issue, and also land use. So if they can provide low-cost housing for people that want to live there and then come on to Lagos, and then the two states can agree on the kind of mode of transport that will be, from policy perspective first, and then into implementation. So that you're not implementing a BRT in Lagos, then somebody is feeding you with downfall, as part of the last mile. And of course, bringing them into Lagos is going to be a problem. So I think to a large extent, that kind of discussion also need to be going on at the moment. So I will also mention the issue of funding. I know sometimes we don't mention issues like this. The issue is that, and I'm speaking now as a Lagosian and everybody that's also connected to this program, that we need to help government in the area of funding. To be honest, funding is a big issue because funding public transport is a very, very, very major investment. If you look at what Lagos currently spend on infrastructure a year, it's probably in the neighborhood of $2 billion. Compared to a city like London, that is spending almost 17 billion pounds, and New York spends $24 billion a year. Because there's no way we can dimension some of this development without looking at some of the inputs. Funding is a big issue, and some of us believe that, I think as citizens, we also have to contribute more. I have suggested before that we probably need to introduce transport tax to Lagos. Otherwise, the rate of development is going to be slow compared to the rate of growth of the population. We've argued before at some of our different forums to say that if you look at how long it's taking Lagos to build some of the BRT, some of the railway projects, and the high capital intensive projects that need to solve this problem, it takes time because of funding. To a large extent, it's funding issue. And there's no way you can fund them if you don't have effective taxation system in place. So maybe there might be need to consider that at this point, because if it takes you another 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to come up with the new rail project, the BRT project, and so on and so forth, by the time this project come on board, the population is increasing. Migration, people are coming from other states and joining your state. At that point, by the time you're opening the system, you're already having full capacity. And then you're thinking of an expansion again. So it's going to be a vicious circle for a very long time to come. So one solution that we, as said, need to probably happen, at the policy level, is that there must be some traffic issue. Because we all agree in Lagos that traffic is a problem to everybody. And I've said it before, it's the word everybody must use every day. Everybody, whether you're adults, you're children, you're a teacher, you're a banker, there's one word everybody uses every day. That word is traffic. It's become a menace. So, and there's no reason why government can say, look, we need to do something about this. Let's introduce some taxation that can help us fund this project, bring them on stream on time, so that we can have pool of funds to do expansion. Also, We have also canvassed that Lagos also need to seek federal government intervention in the area of funding. Between Lagos and Kano, and I'm happy I'll bring Kano on board here at this point also, that between Lagos and Kano, these two states generate about 95% of the non-oil revenue of Nigeria. We're talking of company tax, we're talking even VAT, okay? And the states that are generating oil revenue in this country already have what they call NDDC, they get 13% derivation. But states like Lagos that are also responsible for non-oil revenue should also have some development commission where they can attract federal funding. All over the world, cities that are economic capitals around the world, like London and New York, they get federal support. You know, so I think it's something that needs to be pursued aggressively from the point of view of policy. Lagos and Kano are the two states, about 90% of the non-oil revenue of Nigeria generated, but they face a huge burden of population, infrastructure problem. And I think that it's not out of place to ask for Lagos Kano Commission, so that where these two states can come up with their infrastructure projects and then can attract federal funding. Because the truth is, Lagos on its own cannot fund all this infrastructure within the time speed that we need them. And then they cannot even cope with the expansion with the way the population is growing and across all the 36 states of Nigeria. Most of the graduates, I can say to you that almost 80% of graduates in Nigeria, produced Nigeria, are attracted to Lagos. And this is continuing on a year-on-year basis. So the problem can't be just left for Lagos alone to solve. So the issue of funding is something that I think needs to be effectively dealt with. And we need to start addressing it now. Otherwise, because before we get to that point, we should be thinking of where is the next funding going to come from. You know, the MD of Lamata did mention a lot of the project. I'm sure by the time you ask her to open some of these budgets, the kind of figures we hear will be mind-boggling, and which is the truth. These projects are capital intensive, but we need to fund them. How do we fund them in a sustainable manner that in the next couple of years they can come on stream, and then expansion will be a problem for Lagos? Even not only funding them, also operation is another big issue. So these things require heavy funding, and I think the citizens and federal government have to help Lagos so that we can effectively deal with this, this problem. But for the last note at this point, I will also say that it is incumbent on all of us that the problem we face, I grew up under an environment where we all have to use downfall, we have to use buses and use taxis. And by the time my generation come into employment, the dream of everybody is to buy a car. And now we have seen the effect, because like has been said before, there's no alternative. Now we have to drive this alternative. If there's anything we need to give to the coming generation behind us, is for them to grow up with travel cards. If the next generation have to contend with buying their own cars as well, believe me, we cannot enjoy our retirement. I'm saying this because it's incumbent on us to look at the next generation and say, look, gentlemen, we are going to give you that affordable, reliable, and comfortable public transport system. So you don't have to wake up and say, look, when I leave school, the next thing I want to buy is a car. That is not a sustainable policy. That is not something that any country or any generation want to leave for the ones coming after them. And I'm putting it in the generational perspective because we have to see it as the vision that need, as a matter of fact, need to be delivered. And for me, it's something we have to do because we can't cope with every generation having to buy more cars. And when you do that, there's no amount of money that you can spend on road expansion that can solve any problem. So the public transport is the way to go. And for us to do that effectively, we have to massively promote it, and we need funding for that. And I also add a small economic dimension to it. I mean, elsewhere around the world, in the West, people are they're going into employment. The first thing they think of is owning a house, mortgage. And that is one sustainable way of creating economy. American economy today, mortgage is considered close to 60%. And that's why you see during this COVID crisis, one of the issues that keep coming up is mortgage. How do people pay rent? And that has created a huge economy. But in Nigeria today, an average graduate that's coming out of school, the first thing he wants to go and buy is a fairly used Otunba car. This is a perishable. A lot of money that should be channeled into construction industry, mortgage industry, is put into buying rickety cars and then adding more to the congestion problem. So we need to, as a matter of policy, as a matter of vision, promote public transport aggressively. And so that the next generation, everybody will think first about owning a travel card. I think if we can achieve that, which I think is possible, we will have done something that no generation has done before. And like the mayor of Colombia said, that a rich country is not where the poor have car, is where the rich use public transportation. So I'll stop at this point for time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your insight into this. To quickly proceed on this, we have the MD of LASTMA, Lagos State Water Authorities, Mr. Emmanuel Oluwadamilola. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. And very insightful contributions. And I think I'll just take it from where my counterparts within the public sector have already started from, especially the Honorable Commissioner and MD Lamata. And let me also make a correction. It's not MD LASTMA as well. It's also General Manager LASTMA. Just to make that note. I think following up to what everybody had said, I think what we're doing with the waterways is to ensure that we don't develop the waterways in isolation, which is what we've probably seen with other modes as well. So right now, in taking the waterways to where it currently should be, we're ensuring that we're making sure that in terms of infrastructural development, how are we taking into consideration multimodal transportation? And how are we ensuring that the jetties that are being built, there's an adjoining road to it, which is going to lead to the last mile connectivity, which the MD Lamata spoke about. So the jetties are currently being built now, because a lot of, to look at the history of water transportation, a lot of the jetties that were built for communities. And these were communities where they didn't factor the fact that people will come and be living there at this point in time. So let's take into consideration, let's take for example, Ikorodu. We have now currently about 50% of those who are on the waterways coming from Ikorodu down to the island. They all live in Ikorodu and work on the island. And we're seeing that was the proper planning done at that point in time? No, but however, what can we do? Because we must look at the existing infrastructure we have. And what the state government is doing is, okay, let's upgrade the existing infrastructure that we have as best as we can, as opposed to saying, let's start building new jetties and new terminals here and there. So we're upgrading the existing infrastructure. But what we've done as well, looking at things holistically, is, okay, Lekki Expressway, we can see there's a lot of congestion. And in the next 10 years, lots more people are going to move down this route. So what are we doing along that route? We're ensuring that we channelize that route all the way down to Ekpe. And there'll be several jetties at different points along that route as well. Also looking at the Third Mainland Bridge, how can we, through the waterways, decongest the Third Mainland Bridge? Where are they coming from? Where do we need to build a terminal? So for example, yes, there's one in Ilaje, but we know we've had some dredging issues, which is currently being addressed. But the Shoki side as well, can we look at that as well and then put up a terminal there so that people park their cars there and then come down to the island? That is also currently being considered. So in terms of the infrastructure, that is what is currently going on. But in terms of now the ferry operations, how do we challenge that? 90% of the current commercial operators are the informal sector, almost like what you have on the roads. How are we able to ensure that the issues we've had on the road, we don't also bring them down to the waterways? So with that, what we're now doing is, okay, we want to formalize the existing operators, while at the same time, encouraging private operators to come and invest in ferry transportation. So we're looking at a system whereby government is able to build the necessary infrastructure, but obviously it can't build it alone, because like Mr. Otunola has spoken about funding. It's important that the government is also supported in terms of funding of building this infrastructure. But the private sector will primarily focus on investing in ferry operations. So they will own the ferries and run the ferries. But we know that the private operators, obviously with a profit-driven mindset as well, will think, okay, we don't want to go to non-viable routes. So the government can then come in and say, okay, those non-viable routes, because we will still want to move our citizens and we're concerned about negotiations, we will be moving them from those non-viable routes. And then thirdly, I think for the foundation of all of this is we must build a safety system. There's a culture in Lagos that people are generally even scared of the waterways. I mean, I can use myself as an example that when I got to LASTMA, I didn't know how to swim. And here, this was me going on a boat with all the people on the boat who could swim. So I had to learn how to swim when I got to LASTMA. But also what I've been able to now do is ensure that 50% of my staff as well who couldn't swim have started to learn how to swim. And how do we also promote that swimming culture for the next generation? We must think about it in public schools. How do we promote it? In a lot of private schools now, they're promoting the children to start learning how to swim. And it's even a normal thing where you pay for swimming lessons. So at the public school level, we're also in conversations with the Ministry of Education, and let's begin to put it into their curriculum. They must learn how to swim. We must have built swimming pools. So that gives them, that kind of confidence even going on the waterways. So a lot of awareness of look, being on the waterways, if you wear your life jacket, you're actually safe. In the case of any accident, the life jacket will sustain you to help get to you. So the state government is ensuring that we have a safe system, because that was what will give people the confidence to then go on the waterways. An emergency and rescue system, and also a control room that shows you where are all the different vessels on the waterways, where are they going to? And where are they currently? Where are they currently? And do they have any issues? And if they have any issues, how can we respond immediately? So, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of decongesting the roads, and in terms of the formalizing of the existing operators and the safety system, I think for us on the waterways, I think that is what the current focus is. And I think as questions and answers come up, we'll take other things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel Oluwadamilola, GM LASTMA. We appreciate your contribution. We need to go ahead with the MD of Primero, that's Mr. Fola Tinubu. Sir, you can proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Like
Morning,
the Honorable Commissioner said, the Honorable Commissioner has already laid out all the Lagos State government policies, and so as the MD of Lamata. What I would like to speak about is looking at it from a private investor and private operators perspective. Number one is that the way the system works right now is not sustainable, which is what the MD of Planet Project was talking about earlier, which is that we have created a problem for ourselves by over-concentrating jobs in VI Ikeja. Because what we noticed is that in the morning, everybody is coming towards that place. And in the evening, everybody is going back. We've created lots of bedroom communities. What we need to do is change our land use and start creating businesses in Ikorodu, in Alimosho, Agege, so that not everybody will need to come to Lagos Island or Ikeja. Because by so doing, it makes it easier to move people up and down. Because right now, we are all moving in one direction in the morning, and we're all moving in the other direction in the evening. And the pressure on the roads network is so high. But if you notice in the morning, the pressure on the road network, people coming out of Lagos Island or coming from Ikeja, there are very few cars going that way, and vice versa in the evening. So the first thing I think we really need to do, is look at our land use and encourage businesses to move out of VI, Lekki, Ikeja, and move them to the suburbs. The second one is funding. Everybody, the government, I don't care what Lagos State government does. They cannot have enough money to do this on their own. They need private companies to come in and invest heavily, because this public transport system requires a lot of money. And if Lagos State government tries to do it on its own, like the MD of Planet Project says, by the time they finish, which will take them almost 4, 5, 6 years or more people will have come in, and we're just going through a vicious circle. We need massive investment from private sector to complement what Lagos State is doing. And also we need massive investment from federal government, because whether we like it or not, Lagos State is the face of Nigeria. and whatever happens in Lagos State affects the whole of Nigeria. The federal government cannot fold their hands and leave everything to Lagos State government to do. They need to come up with, we need to come up with a policy where there's a single-digit interest rate for people that wants to invest in public transport. Because right now, the banks will charge you commercial rates to invest in public transport. And I don't care how much, if you're paying 20-something% interest, you know, it's almost impossible to, you know, for the project to be viable. So we need a federal government and central bank to come in and help out Lagos State government by coming up with a way where people that wants to invest in private or in public transport can get single-digit interest, and it will encourage lots of private sector people to come in. The other thing that the federal government can do is help us tap into this pension funds money. The pension funds administrators are sitting on a lot of money that even Lagos State government can tap into. They're sitting on trillions because there's no way we can do this with just Lagos State with the money coming to Lagos State via taxes and federal allocation. Lagos State also needs to borrow heavily to do this. And if they're going to borrow heavily, we have to find a way to do it, because even Lagos State right now is borrowing at double-digit interest rate. And it's not sustainable for Lagos State or private sector to be doing that. So from my perspective, I believe the federal government needs to really think about this and come to the aid of Lagos State and find a way to give Lagos State and people that wants to invest in public transport single-digit money, so that it's cheaper for Lagos State, it's cheaper for the people, and you see the massive investment that will come in, because the rail system alone runs into billions of dollars. And the bus system also, the BRT system, each BRT system will cost at least 30 to 40 million US dollars. So if you're asking people to invest this kind of money, they have to be able to get a good return on it. And Lagos State government cannot dictate what the bank or what, you know, what the bank charges or what the investor charges. But the federal government can come to Lagos State government's aid by making it easier and cheaper for Lagos State and private interest to come in to invest. The other part is Lagos State also has to think big and think that majority of, you know, there are lots of people that lives in Mowe and Ogun State that work in Lagos State. Lagos State needs to work hand in hand with Ogun State especially, and also Oyo State to some extent. Like the BRT scheme should not just stop in Lagos State. The BRT scheme needs to go all the way into Ogun State, at least, you know, into Ota or Mowe and all that, so that it's a lot easier for people coming from that end to, you know, to get into Lagos State. Because right now, what they do is they come on this Danfo and all these rickety buses, and when they get there, you know, when they get to Lagos State, they try to get onto the BRT scheme. But if we can get the BRT to go to them, it makes it easier, you know. So we need to work with all the adjoining states, Ogun State especially, and Oyo State to a certain extent, because if the train system that Lagos State is working on, I would suggest that it should even go all the way to Ibadan, if possible, and go to somewhere like Ijebu-Ode and Abeokuta, so that people can live in those places, take the train, and come to Lagos to work. Within 45 minutes to an hour, they're already at work. And within 45 minutes to an hour, they're back home. But we cannot build our way out of this in Lagos because there's no land. And we can keep on sand filling and creating more lands, but we're just throwing up trouble for ourselves down the road. Because unfortunately for us, Lagos State is, is too small landmass for all the people living in it. And the only way out for us is to find a way to move people out of, to move people out into adjoining states and let them commute to Lagos State. And if they're going to commute, we have to make it easier to get them in by doing a proper rail system that would run from Oyo State and Ogun State to Lagos State. In fact, I would even suggest, I will even go to suggest that we need to look at the regional integration, integration that the rail system needs to look at the Southwest as a region and work something out so that it's a lot easier for us, to move up and down, in all over the Southwest. But if we do not find a way to get the federal government and the CBN to come to Lagos State government's aid and the private operators' aid, everything we're talking about is academic, because as long as Lagos State government is borrowing in double-digit interest rates and the private operators are borrowing in double-digit interest rates, they will not be able to come up with the kind of investments that this public transport needs. And what the MD of Planet Project said earlier was very appropriate, that the federal government needs to understand the unique nature of Lagos State. And we cannot play politics with this. If we want development for the whole of Nigeria, then Lagos State has to be developed, because majority of the business is transacted in this state. So the Lagos State, the federal government must find a way to come to the aid of Lagos State government and also private investors. If they can do that, they will unleash a big money and activity that will ensure that what is taking Lagos State government 2-3 years to build will be done in a year or less. And Lagos State government can now be bold and continue to build out all this infrastructure on a massive scale. The roads in Lagos State are terrible, but because of the demand on them, as Lagos State government is fixing them, the number of traffic is growing daily. That as they are being fixed, more or less, they are more or less being damaged, because if you build a road with in mind that only 100,000 vehicles will use it a day, and 1 million vehicles are using it a day, it's just a matter of time before the road damages. And while and they already thought, okay, we fix this, let's go to the next one, but the one that we fixed is already damaged. So the only solution is for federal government to, to really, really come to Lagos State government's aid. Lagos State government has all these great plans, and I've seen it. Lamata has shared that with us. I've seen, their BRT plans. Like the Honorable Commissioner said, they have 13 BRT corridors planned. We're only using the first one. The second one will be ready, and they're working on the third one already. We need to speed it up so that all the other ones come on scheme also. The rail, they're building the first one right now, going from, I believe, somewhere near Festac all the way to Marina. But we need to build the one coming from Free Trade Zone to Marina. We need to build the one from Agege to Marina. We need to do that. And we need to do it very fast, because the demand is so high. But because of budget constraints, Lagos State can only go one step at a time. So we need the help of federal government. We need the help of federal government to come in and really find a way, either investing themselves or at least finding a way to get Lagos State government to borrow money for the infrastructure need in single digits, and also the private investment to borrow in single digits, because that will, that will enable us to do what needs to be done in Lagos State. We can, because without funding, everything is planning, but the planning must be backed by funding. And the only solution is for federal government to really, really come to Lagos State government's aid. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Fola Tinubu. Thank you very much, all the discussants. We appreciate your contribution. Not to waste most of our time, we're going to be out here in a couple of minutes. The next session is the question and answer, and also contributions. Then after that, we'll go to presentation of certificates, then vote of thanks to all those who participated. So to proceed on these, if you have any question, or if you have a contribution, and just go to the chat room, the participant section of your Zoom application. You can raise your hand and we'll give you the opportunity to speak. Please, until you are called upon, do not unmute your mic. And if you are not speaking, please mute your mic so that there will be less interference. We can have a proper conversation. Thank you very much. And also, in case you don't want to speak, you can as well go to the chat room and put in your question or your comments. There's someone online as well who is capturing all that, and we're going to relate all that. For any question or contribution, please make it very fast. If you can use less than 30 seconds, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. To proceed on the questions and contributions, we have two people already who have indicated interest to contribute. One of them is Emeka Okafor. Emeka, please, you can speak.
Good morning, all. Thank you for having me here. The speaker before me has spoken extensively on various issues and solutions concerning traffic. Some are long-term and some are low-hanging fruits to take a short time to accomplish. And the GM of LASTMA has spoken on how important intersections are for the traffic flow. At these intersections, if we had data, as he mentioned, there are some days where traffic will go in one specific direction due to events like concerts or weddings, or maybe an accident happened and that whole area is now locked down, like the Otunola bridge accident. If we can know this information and reroute traffic from the traffic lights communicating with each other from a central control room, as the Honorable Commissioner also mentioned we should have, then we can decrease the traffic issue in Lagos, especially at the traffic junction points. So we're also using the traffic lights. When do we have data from cameras at these different traffic points, and also from Google Maps, because Google Maps already has an overview of the general traffic of all over the city, but it's not accurate down to the car. But traffic lights at junctions will give us that accurate information. So with all that data, we can combine it and know when to say that this lane should stop or this lane should go. And also doing that, we can give priority to public transport all around the city. So we'll be able to time it. So say the commissioner now also spoke on a traffic timetable, BRT route timetable. So that no one should wait for longer than 5 minutes. With the use of these traffic lights that are smart, we can help that be achieved. And also for emergency vehicles like ambulances or fire trucks when those occasions arise, and also in port areas. And also generally having an application that allows residents of Lagos see the best route for them at that particular point in time, according to what the traffic light is saying. So we'll also be able to control the general traffic flow by ourselves and know how much traffic we'll be expecting at each traffic light or designated area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Emeka. Engineer Abraham.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank all the speakers from the commissioner to all of the GMs. I'm really, really impressed with the quality of thoughts that these fellows have expressed. It means that we have the right minds trying to really tackle this problem. But common to most of all of the solutions are the hard engineering parts. My thoughts are that there are some other low-hanging fruits that all of us can put our minds to. Incidentally, most of the speakers also talked tangentially about it, specifically the LASTMA GM really was passionate about starting education from the kindergarten level. In other words, let's raise a new generation of people who can, who are better trained to use our modern facilities. It is in that light, we in NSE VI, we do have a committee which we set up, and we call that a campaign of road traffic education and enlightenment campaign. The thrust of this campaign is that a lot of the road users, all of us who use the road, we are poorly educated in how to use roads. So this campaign is meant now to enlighten road users on safe driving practices, how to reduce road rage, to be courteous with one another on the road, obey traffic laws. Now, if we have a curriculum, that was why, if we have a curriculum wherein we road users, that includes both government people and the people, on every person who uses roads, a lot of the congestion are due to, can be reduced. So as we flesh out the details of this committee, all of these organizations from LASTMA to LAMATA and everybody in the transportation industry, our committee will be coming around to flesh these ideas out more, because we believe it's a low-hanging fruit that can be deployed almost immediately, and we begin to see results. People should learn to maintain lanes, no matter how inconvenient it is. If you are not turning off a particular turning, there's no need for you to be on that lane. Of course, how to implement this are the things that we are going to consider. So these are the thoughts that we have on this plan. I just thought that this is a good place to share it with this audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Abraham. We have some questions and comments that have been on the chat box. Engineer Bolalegiwa, are you ready? Can we proceed on that?
Yes, I'm ready.
Go ahead, please.
So good afternoon, everyone. So let me first start by thanking the Honorable Commissioner for Transport, Dr. Frederic Oladeinde, as well as our group of really esteemed panelists for the excellent presentation of the facts and the roles and strategies in place, as well as recommendations on the way forward. We can indeed see why ECO is for sure based on the people that we have, as well as what we're doing towards the greater Lagos. So let me start with the questions and comments that we have in the chat box. So we have one. I think this will go to the Honorable Commissioner himself, and of course he's free to delegate. Rather than suggesting transportation tax, why can't the government regulate and let the private sector run transportation? Additional tax on Lagos residents is really not acceptable at this time. So, Honorable Commissioner, please.
Okay, thank you very much. When you look at the Lagos State policy and what we've talked about, we are looking to bring in the private sector to participate in providing transportation as well as services for Lagos State. We know that the government cannot do it all. And so we are not increasing tax on transportation, if I understand that question properly. But what we're doing is to ensure that the appropriate people who can provide services are brought on board. And whether we like it or not, transportation is something that we have to pay for, but we'll make sure that people pay what is right. And what we're doing is to ensure that transportation is affordable to everybody. And that's why we are deploying intelligent transport systems, such as the Comm ticketing system, so that you don't pay for the individual modes of transport that you get on. So, with a Comm ticketing system, you're bound to save about 40% of what you currently pay. So we're encouraging the private sector to come in to help us to develop the infrastructure. And we're also talking to the banks. We're talking to the federal government. We're trying to see how we can ramp up funding, as well as ensure that we provide a conducive environment. And that includes negotiating with banks to reduce interest rate, etc. So all this we are doing, and just to make sure that people get value for money and that people get a good service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner, for that insight. So we have a comment here that sort of ties into the next question. Projects have been—
Hello, Engineer Bolanle.
Yes, please.
Yeah, before you proceed, I think the chairman has an information for everyone.
Okay.
Chairman, yeah, it's a simple one. I think it's a good idea for everyone to type out their questions in the comment column, and then you can select them and then read them out. That it will make the meeting a bit more organized that way, okay?
Okay, thank you for that, sir. So on to the next comments and question. Projects have been seen to be excessively overpriced in comparison to what is obtainable in other places for similar projects in similar terrains. The Lagos Blue Rail is an example. One of the reasons it's taken so long to complete is because the project was overpriced from the beginning. Costs will also increase year on year with inflation. Infrastructure will be easier to build if they are appropriately priced and well thought out. So the big problem is project conception and pricing, not necessarily funding. So would you say you agree with that comment? So any of the panelists can take this. So Honorable Commissioner, sir, you can start.
Okay, I will start and then I'll hand over to the Managing Director of LAMATA. I don't think that's correct. We actually planned the Strategic Transport Master Plan extensively. In particular for the Blue Rail, we actually brought in consultants to actually develop the concept, and then we did an appraisal, we did a demand study, and then we looked at whether it's going to be viable, and then how the private sector will come in, as well as how the public sector would participate. Now, with regard to the Blue Line, what we discovered, especially when we started the development, was that we needed to negotiate with the federal government, because when you look at where we have to put some of the stations, some of these lands are owned by federal government. And so, in the process of dialogue, having a conversation with the federal government, we discovered that even some of the lands were owned by several agencies, which created a lot of problems. And so that's what caused some of the delays. Secondly, in particular, because the Blue Line was supposed to go through Ido, we discovered that the land in Ido was very complicated, and that's because we couldn't actually figure out who to talk to in terms of, okay, who are we paying to actually acquire the land? And that's why the conversation between state government and federal government has to improve. And there needs to be some kind of synergy there. But we got to the point where we just thought, you know what, this is more complex than we anticipated, and so we had to bypass the do and then just develop another alignment just to make sure that we get to Marina. Also, one of the problems that we have in Lagos, and this is a very, this is a problem that is well established, is that when you look at the way our utilities are laid out, we don't have a good master plan. And so sometimes when you begin your project, you then discover that these pipelines are here, etc. We don't have a map of where they are. And when you look at the Blue Line in particular, the Blue Line has to fly over the lagoon. And inside the lagoon, you have utility pipes, etc., which we had to, it was during the project that we discovered where these specific pipes or etc. were. And so that brought, additional complications, etc. So I think one of the reasons why the Blue Line is taking so long also is because we are having to, discover or, find our way through where utilities that have been developed hundreds of years ago are laid, and we do not have the master plan of where all of them are. So it's unfortunate, but and in the process of developing the Blue Line, we are now beginning to catalog all this so that the same mistake is not made 100 years down the line, etc. So there are a lot of technical issues that we encountered on the Blue Line, and obviously our finance. I mean, we laid out the finance, but because of the time lag, etc., we encountered a lot of complications, which the MD of Lamata will talk about. But in terms of planning, I think we plan well. That's something that we do very well in Lagos. We have a master plan. We do a lot of demand study. We go out, we even do, I mean, we go out to look at where buildings that needs to be taken down are, etc. And then we do a lot of compensation. So there's a lot of planning that goes into developing all these infrastructure. So I would believe that we don't plan well, and these rail projects are expensive. Now, our rail projects are more expensive than what you find in the maybe in the developed world because of the texture of our soil also. So the kind of ground that we have to, I mean, we have to treat it specially, and so that adds to the cost. But I'll let the MD of Lamata talk a little bit more about that, but I think let me just hand over to her, and then she will complete that question.
Thank you very much, sir. Engineer Mrs. Akinsanya, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. With regard to the cost for the Blue Line, I think maybe we should start by comparing apples with apples. World over, railway pricing, you can sort of tell what a rail would cost. So if I look at a rail and say that I'm totally at grade, I'm in green terrain, and I have no infrastructural encumbrances along my road, you would look at it and say 20 to 25 million per kilometer, and I'm talking dollars. The minute you begin to talk about encumbrances, you have to demolish houses, you have to take out utilities, you have to do all of that. That adds the cost. And then also, the minute you begin to elevate your rail, elevated rail is a minimum of 2.5 times the price of an at-grade rail, i.e. the rail that's just, I mean, we're all engineers. So for me, when we talk about, oh, Lagos rail is expensive, this, that, and the other, we need to be mindful of what we're comparing it with. The cost of the Lagos rail compared to, say, I mean, there was when you look world over and you are looking at inner cities where they're building rail, most of them are not doing it now. They're doing it, they have done it years ago. Most of the rail that you're comparing us with are probably rail that's, when you're comparing us, I've heard a lot about the rail in Kenya or wherever that is so many kilometers. You're doing all of that in Greenfield, you're doing all of that at grade. And for us, where over 60% of the rail line is elevated, the whole of that rail is in the middle of a highly congested city. So the kilometer that we have and the cost per kilometer, honestly, when we sit and do that, we are not crazy expensive. And the reality is, let us understand how much Lagos State has actually spent on the rail as we speak, as against what is out in the public domain. We've not spent $1 billion like put out all over Lagos. The whole of that was costed at $1.12 million. The whole 27 kilometers. And we spent maybe half of that to get to. So really and truly, when we say things, we need to be certain of what we're saying and be certain that what we're saying is actually correct. And like I said to start, let us compare apples with apples. My commissioner has talked about the encumbrances that the state had to deal with. So now we've done 13 kilometers. We've done 13 kilometers roundabout to Marina, and we're looking at $600 and something million, just on that, round about $600 million. That says that I've done my rail at maybe 50 million per kilometer. And I said just now that greenfield rail, you can Google it, 20 million per kilometer. And when I'm elevated, the minute I'm elevated, you know that you're going at least 2.5, 3 times the price. And then you talk about all the other encumbrances that my commissioner has spoken about. So in fairness, I think we haven't got a bad deal, but you know, people will say what they will say, but the reality is clear. And the cost, the price of the contracts that CCCC has, if anybody goes to National Theatre, there is a write-up there, and it is written. The whole contract, all the way to Okokomaiko, is $1.12 billion. So any which way we look at it, a lot of the things that have been said, exaggeration, but also it's not us sitting down and comparing apples with apples. The infrastructure we have is superb. Everything that is on our rail, right now, negotiating and discussing with private sector, they've had their foreign consultants come to review what we've done, and the story is the same. Fantastic infrastructure. So in fairness, I think Lagos has done excellently well.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Honorable Commissioner and MD Lamata. There are a few things you raised and we'll come back to them. So the Honorable Commissioner mentioned some technical issues we've been having, and then you've also talked about the complexities in terms of having elevated rails, as well as the peculiarities that we have, especially being Lagos. So what's the role or the level of involvement of Nigerian engineers in the current inner road construction and rehabilitation in Lagos? So you can take, any of the panelists can take that, please. What's the role or the level of involvement of Nigerian engineers?
Okay, all right. Basically, the standard policy in Lagos State is to make sure that even if we get a foreign consultant or a foreign contractor to come and work in Lagos or in Nigeria in particular, the workforce, maybe about 60% of the workforce has to be Nigerians. So we have a lot of Nigerian engineers working with the Chinese company that's building the rail line. We've even gone further to set up a transport school because we need to ramp up, the profession, that's the transport profession in Lagos State, so that the indigenes can actually manage it. So we set up a transport school in Lagos State University where we're training engineers as well as transport planners, so that when they come out, they can either work in CCCC, they can work in any of these companies. They even work for Planet also, so that we expose them, and then there are various courses that we run where we send them abroad, and so we make sure that 60% to 70% of the workforce are actually Nigerians that do the work. So I'll let the managing director also contribute to that. Managing Director Lamata.
Okay, ma'am, please go ahead.
Okay, so in terms of the involvement of Nigerian engineers, I think all of us are aware of, is it Order 5 that mandates that certain levels of work must be given to Nigerian engineering outfits. And I think that is well, we have a lot of our projects are handled by local consultants. I myself once supervised the Lagos Blue Rail, and in that supervision team, we had only designated experts when we needed them. Most of them were Nigerians, even if they were Nigerians who came from the West, based on the fact that we hadn't built a railway in Nigeria for a long time. But the bottom line is, Lagos in particular is very keen on consultants. And like Dr. Fred said, that's why Lagos to set up the transportation engineering department. And they liaise well with LAMATA. A lot of times they send us students, they work with us, they come to see us, we give them talks, they see what we're doing. So from Lagos's perspective, it's in our interest to develop our own, because there will come a time when we should be able to manage and ensure that the maintainability of all our assets and all of our infrastructure is done by us. So part of what we do as a matter of course is that we give access in LAMATA list to a lot of these engineers from the universities, LASU, even University of Lagos, or wherever it is they're coming from to work with us. And in terms of employing consultants, we work, even when we have foreign consultants, we ensure that they work with local consultants. It's something that, not just for me personally, because I'm an engineer and I sit on the board in ACEN that drives this, ensuring that we indigenize a lot of the work that we do, but we cannot continue to put out engineers and not have work for them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry, please go ahead. You're breaking up.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said thank you, so I was ending.
No. I realized you broke up, so I thought you had finished, but I realized it was just the network. So please conclude your statement.
The point is, Lagos is passionate about ensuring that we have a state that can be run if we need to, solely by Nigerians. So that's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We appreciate the insights. So our next comment/question is about urban planning and dispute resolution. So some individuals obtained C of O's and constructed residential houses on existing roads. What is Lagos State doing to address such complaints, some as far back as 2017?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, if people, and that's why we have the Lagos Model City Plans, which highlights the areas where we have our right-of-ways. So if people build on the right-of-ways, then, that's something that they shouldn't do, and obviously they'll be punished. We have a process where when people are seeking for land and then they want their CFO, we have to check to make sure that it's not on the right of way. And then we go through a number of channels just to clear it before it's issued. So if people go through the back door and then obtain CFOs on right of way, then that's something that they have to swallow. And because there is a proper channel, there is a process, and that process is well established and well laid out. So I'm advising that people should follow that channel to ensure that they don't get through this kind of problem.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that. So we'll take that on board, and we hope that we can get avenues to the right procedure as well as the right contacts to get what we need. So the next one is for Mr. Emmanuel. What is LASTMA doing to improve the response time to emergency? It takes an average of 30 to 50 minutes to respond to emergency on the waterways. And you already talked about the fact that a lot of people can't swim. So what are you doing to improve the response time to emergencies? Mr. Emmanuel?
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of emergencies, what the state government is doing this year is to set up what we call an emergency and rescue unit, which will have 3 points. One in Ikorodu, one in the Ojo axis, and then one in Falomo as well. So those 3 units will be set up, and then within 5 minutes to 7 minutes, we'll be able to respond accordingly. But also, bearing that in mind, one of the things we've also been able to do as well is that most of the time when incidents happen, and then let us know what is going on as well. So we work with local divers and also fishermen as well to inform. But the state government is actually setting up emergency and rescue units at 3 points: Ojo, Ikorodu, and Falomo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So this is related to the design of our side roads. Do we realize that the 90 degrees turning angle into side roads contributes to road congestions? In other climes, side roads have a gentle curve in and out of them compared to our own hard 90 degrees angle. So is there something being done in that regard? So this can go to any of the panelists, especially those from the state government. In terms of design of our roads and the sharp turning, yes, sir.
Yeah, can GM LASTMA take that, please?
Okay, sir, please,
Hello?
GM LASTMA,
Hello?
you can go ahead, please.
Hello,
yes, we can
you hear
you.
me?
We can hear you, sir.
All right, yes. That observation is pretty true. And I think I actually did respond on the forum and by text. But what it is I think the first challenge is the issues of alignment of the drainage. And I think there's lack of coordination between all the different agencies that do things on the public highway. And I start from the beginning with those that provide electricity poles. You would notice that from the time, even before a road is constructed, and electricity is meant to be passed through to an estate or development area, instead of taking the proper alignment of the road, taking cognizance of future development, like changing a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road, they put electric poles and pass the wires in the middle of the road. And by the time the people that need to come out and do the drainage, they're now picking up a drainage alignment based on the electrical poles that have already been put in there. And that can be so skewed that sometimes you don't even have a straight line. And then the engineers come around, and instead of having a flare to turning into a road from a side road as they created, they just come in and do, if they come and do a 90 degrees as opposed to having a 45 or even a lower degree angle. And that makes it difficult for a 2-lane road, for a long vehicle or a truck, for them to be able to turn in and out of that side road without obstructing 2 lanes of traffic. And I think that's a major flaw across the whole of Lagos State. The only areas where you will find some kind of alignment would be maybe in the CBD area, when Julius Berger had gone back in there a few years ago to go and sort it out. But mostly, about 85% of all the roads in this Lagos State do not have proper alignment, and that needs to be addressed from an engineering point of view. And I think it spells more from a laziness kind of attitude, because it's more easier for a contractor to go there, do a straight road, align it with a T-junction, instead of thinking, okay, let me do a proper drain cover to get my angle for turning for the back wheel to turn into the side road. And that seriously needs to be looked at. That needs to be part of the conditions for any road construction or even repair. It's never too late. It can always be adjusted. And it is a major observation that was made by one of the panelists.
Thank you very much, sir.
Can the managing director of Planet Project also contribute to that, please?
Please go ahead, sir. Planet Project, MD Planet Projects. Engineer Otunola, are you still on the call?
Sorry. Okay. Thank.
You're on mute. Please unmute.
No, I've done that now. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Well, from safety perspective also, it's not just from the point of view of speed at junctions that you need to look at the turning radius. For us, we deliberately want to limit the speed of vehicles as they approach junctions, because as we all know, if you approach junction at high speed, the tendency is for you to have accident, on the road. So one of the ways by which we limit accidents and control safety at the junction is for us to limit the turning radius. So 90 degrees is not ideal, but it should be as close as possible to 90 degrees. You always have to strike that balance. Another thing you need to consider also at intersection is that is the places where pedestrians usually want to cross the road. So if your road is at, it's not too close to 90 degrees, if it's something like 30, 35, vehicles are going to be approaching your junction at top speed. As a consequence, your pedestrian will not be able to cross. So it's either they are crossing and vehicles are knocking them down, or they have to wait for a longer period of time. And when they decide to move, you're also going to have that contest between the vehicles and the road. So sometimes it's deliberate. Of course, it's not a one size fit or one straight jacket solution. Each of the design have to be looked at as a function of the land use of the environment. In some places you can get away with it, maybe if there's not so much of land use, and then yeah, it's easy for you to do something easier, 30, 40 degrees. But sometimes when you're in a busy environment, you have to ensure that a lot of vehicles slow down at junctions. So in order to deliberately slow them down, you can turn your junction design and turning radius as close as possible to 90 degrees, and also to make room for your pedestrian to cross at the junctions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Yes, please.
Hello. Yes, can I just come back in there? I would like to slightly disagree with Engineer Otunola from MD Planning.
Engineer Oduyoye, please go ahead.
Yes. So the reason why is that I totally agree on the safety element. But then in engineering and in the road junction implementation, you've got to strike a balance on both. So the question remains, if we leave most of these junctions at 90 degrees, the tendency is that that junction is more than likely unsignalized, all right? So the main traffic movement on the T, on the main highway, will be going at a faster pace. Now, if a vehicle comes out from a side road at 90 degrees, the tendency is it's going to take up 2 lanes to turn in left or right, mostly right turning. Now, the vehicle on the main highway, on the T junction, is perhaps having a feeling of, I have right of way. So the speed is unlikely to slow down. So when a vehicle ejects, come out from a side road, and you take up the second lane of a fast moving lane, then the chances of a crash is higher as compared to even trying to protect pedestrians. Because if you have, if you have 30-degree turning radius, a pedestrian that comes at a junction knows that you have to look left or right before you cross, where there's no signalization. And so I would want to skew the safety element back into a shorter degree rather than a 90 degree. And that is what causes a lot of crashes at intersections. Because vehicles come, fine, I agree, vehicles come out at higher speed, right? But just because it's a flare and it's got a load, it does not mean they're going to turn in third gear. No matter what you do, you cannot turn out of a side road in third gear, except you're ready to die, all right? So I would like to prevent more crashes than encourage crashes just because I don't want someone to speed into a junction. And that takes us back to the issue of education, of our driving habits, of our caring for other road users, as opposed to just thinking when you're on the road, you have ultimate right over everybody else, and we have this kind of issues that is on ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. As I'm sure the Honorable Commissioner is listening to us as well, because you've touched on a few points in terms of the traffic signages as well as blind spot management, taking into consideration safety of both motorists and pedestrians. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for that. We're fast running out of time, so we'll just take a few more questions as we note that you all are very busy people. So this goes to Mr. Fola Tinubu's suggestion of extending the Lagos infrastructure to neighboring states. Yes, we see that's good, but the challenge is that people then come from neighboring states, make money in Lagos, utilize our infrastructure, and then go back and pay tax in their state of residence. So how would we use policies, or how do we ensure that Lagos State has a way of benefiting from that tax?
Okay, let me just start by saying that when we plan for Lagos State, you have to look at the origin and destination of all your trips. So in planning for Lagos State, we've had to take some bit of Ogun State because majority of a lot of people that work in Lagos State come from Mowi, etc. So in developing the master plan for Lagos State, we developed what we call the mega city region, and the mega city region takes 4 local government areas in Ogun State also to ensure that we have an all-encompassing infrastructure. So when you look at our rail, you look at some of our BLT, they actually go into Ogun State. And in developing that plan, we had, a strong dialogue with Ogun State government. So that strategic transport master plan was developed in collaboration with Ogun State. And we're working together, and we understand the fact that a lot of people will continue to live in Ogun State and work in Lagos State. So there's no point building infrastructure up to the border of Lagos State without looking at what is happening in Ogun State and how do people in Ogun State travel to Lagos State. So there's that regional integration between Lagos State as well as Ogun State. Now, in terms of taxes, etc. So if you're working in Lagos, obviously, and when we tax you, the tax goes to Lagos State. So I don't see that as being a problem. I think the main question is, how do we develop the infrastructure in such a way that Ogun State contributes its own quota and Lagos State contributes its own quota? I think that's the real question there. And the only solution to that is the dialogue between Ogun State and Lagos State, and then bringing consultants or contractors who are able to work with the 2 governments to ensure that when Lagos State and Ogun State develop that infrastructure, there is a formula in which Ogun State is able to extract its own benefit as well as Lagos State. So I think that's the issue here, and not the fact that taxes go to Lagos or Ogun State. I think that's pretty clear how that works. I'll let other people contribute to that also.
Okay, Engineer Otunola is raising his hand. Engineer Otunola, you can go ahead. You're on mute.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make a point of correction on this issue of 90 degrees, because I realize people are making some comment. Again, junction designs and intersection are a function of so many factors. When I say 90 degree, I do not especially say it's going to be 90 degree everywhere. There are so many factors you have to think about. Not only traffic demand, you have to also think about number of lanes that are emerging. You have to think of the land use. So in some cases, 90 degrees are acceptable. I can say that for a fact. So, but it's not one size fits all. It depends on the number of factors at the intersection. But what I don't agree with is to say that you cannot have 90 degrees. Yes, you can have 90 degrees. It depends on the situation. So, and then of course there are standards and manuals that control all these things. So, but that's just one of the points that I want to make. Okay. The other 2 issues, because I have to slow down at the other earlier because of the time allotted. There are 2 other points that I needed to make generally on the traffic issues in Lagos. One of them is the Apapa crisis. I think we will not do ourselves a lot of justice if we don't mention that issue. The Apapa traffic issue, which I believe Lagos State government and federal government are providing solution to. Again, it's one of the issues that further underscore the fact that Lagos need to be helped by federal government in addressing some of the issues they're facing. Today, Lagos Port, Apapa and Tinkan account for more than 95% of import into Nigeria. So Lagos bear the brunt, and again, the federal government have to support. So it's one issue that needs to be addressed, because as we speak, over 41 kilometers of Lagos road network is lost to that crisis. If we do the mapping of all the roads from Mile 2 all the way through Tinkan, it needs to be easier for you if you're coming from First Stack, from Satellite and Axis from Lagos West. It used to be easier for you to connect from Mile 2 down to Coconut, down to Eco Bridge. But right now it's not possible anymore. So close to 41 kilometers of Lagos road has been lost. So it's something that we also need to find solution to as we look at the various issues. Then the other point, which is the last point I need to make on this subject, is the issue of bus parks. Today in Lagos, you have close to 59 bus parks scattered everywhere, and these bus parks are creating their own traffic problem virtually everywhere. In fact, in most cases, virtually every junction, I can say close to 70% of Lagos junction have one loading activity and transport activity or the other, which are further compounding the problem. I think these issues have to be addressed. It's a state issue as part of the parking policy that need to be looked at. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Engineer Otunola. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to take 2 more questions. We'll pledge your indulgence to please send the rest of the questions and comments over to you so that you can help us address them. So the first one I will take of the 2 is that considering that the average commuter rate is 2 passengers per vehicle, are you considering toll fee that is inversely proportional to the number of commuters in the car? So like you mentioned, yes, people have traveled far and wide. We see what is called the HOV lanes or high occupancy vehicle lanes. So what is Lagos State doing to encourage people to share rides? Of course, that's considering social distancing at the moment, but afterwards, what are we doing?
Thank you for that question. For now, what we are trying to do is to, first of all, I mean, we've talked about making public transport attractive so that people can be encouraged to move from private to public transport. Secondly, the issue of HOV lane is something that is medium to long term. It's not something that we're looking at the moment because first of all, you got to provide alternative for people, and that's important. Once we provide a suitable alternative, we will then begin to look at tolling several roads and then looking at the issue of HOV and then penalizing people for not filling up their cars. But I think the priority for now is to let's just develop our public transport. Let's give people alternative before we begin to penalize them and tax them on the road.
Thank you very much, sir. And then the last question that we're going to take now is how effective has it been marking out sections on the road for BRT buses? Has this served the intended purposes, or is it part of the traffic challenge that we have?
Sorry, can you repeat that question again? Sorry.
So how effective has it been marking out sections on the road for BRT buses? Has it served the intended purposes?
Yes. In fact, we did a detailed study, I think about 10 years ago, where we looked at where the population of people are coming from, and then we looked at the geometry of the roads. Based on that, we were able to map out where we can adequately put BRT infrastructure. Now, the only thing I would say is that in a proper, or should I say in a civilized environment, what you want to do is to use lane marking to actually segregate your bus lane from the road. But because of the way we are, we've had to use barriers, which is not appropriate because it has its own safety issues, etc. So for the first BRTs, we've had to segregate using barriers. But going forward, we want to use technology to actually do that segregation. So we'll have cameras and then we'll just use lane marking, and then we should be able to penalize people that use the BRT. But in terms of mapping out where the BRTs are, I think we've adequately done that. But in terms of how we've gone about it, in terms of implementation, I think we need to look at a much more sophisticated way of demarcating BRT lanes from other traffic so that we can reduce safety and we can give more priority to public transport. So yes, the 13 or 14 BRT routes have been well mapped out. We don't have a problem with that. It's just implementation where we need to be much more sophisticated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I see one of our panelists, Engineer Oduyoye. Would you like to contribute to that as well? Engineer Oduyoye.
Yes, I'm here. I wasn't actually going to add to what the Honorable Commissioner said. I just thought in my head there was an area where we have not touched, and that is the area of what engineering methodology do we adopt to prevent or encourage roadside selling, that is people bringing their wares on the walkway and selling on the road. Because by so doing, they prevent pedestrian movement, pedestrians are now forced to walk on the carriageway. When they walk on the carriageway, they reduce the capacity of the highway for moving traffic, and this spills over into buildup of traffic. Now, when you now had people who now feel like 1 minute is not long enough for them to stop and do a quick of shopping on the highway because they don't understand the negative effect of that action, then you can see how easy it is for traffic to build up. And the worst part of it is this tends to happen at busy intersections because they know that is where people are attracted to, and that is where the shopping and the marketing and all sorts of different things are happening. So from an engineering point of view, we still need to be looking at how do you physically prevent this sort of attitude, not just enforcement of going in there to go and destroy their wares and chase them away, because I am telling you from experience, even when you chase them away first day and second day, if you're not there permanently, they will soon be back in 3 days because there are various and varied interests in this sort of activity in Lagos State, and it needs to be addressed. So physically and from an engineering view, we need to be looking at how to prevent the buildup of traffic as opposed to just enforcing it so that you know it is not sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and to our esteemed panelists. We really appreciate all your contributions so far. Like we mentioned earlier, we'll be sending across the comments and the questions in the interest of time. So I'd like to thank you again. So I'm going to hand over right now to Chairman of the branch, Engineer John Audu, FNSE, for the presentation of certificates. Engineer John Audu, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Engineer Bolanle Giwa, FNSE, for an excellent job of moderating this, as well as Engineer Segun Oluomo. We're grateful. We're particularly grateful to our panelists. It's really, it never ceases to amaze me how Lagos is able to appoint people of such quality. It's really amazing the quality that these people bring to the table. And we've been greatly enlightened by everybody here today. We are eternally grateful to you. Just before I present the certificate, I'd like to say that we'll be sharing the communique of this symposium with all of you. It's going to go far and wide. It's also going to contain, like Engineer Bolanle alluded to, it's going to contain all the questions that were not answered here, and possibly we crave your indulgence to please respond to them in your spare time. So to start with, I would like to thank Dr. Frederic Oladeinde, the Honorable Commissioner for Transport. We can never thank you enough. We're grateful to you, sir, for honoring us with your presence and with your insights today. We present to you this electronic certificate as a token of our gratitude for what you've done for our society today, and in particular, Lagos State in general. God bless you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you just remove the K from the Frederic, please? It's a German Frederic without a K.
Okay, we got that. We'll fix that.
Okay, thanks for that. That's all right, and I appreciate it. So it's been a pleasure being here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. I should take responsibility for that because Frederic wasn't there before. I put that there. I put Frederic. So
yeah, Frederic without a K.
Okay, sir. So it's with a H there.
No, the FRADERIC is fine, but just remove the K. That's
awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
So the next certificate, please. Okay, I guess what we will do to save time, we'll send the other certificates to all the other panelists right immediately after this event. Is that correct, Segun?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, great job. Great job. So before I hand over to you to conclude this great occasion, I'd just like to say very, very briefly that like Engineer Abraham Rakbo said, the NLC Victoria Island branch has a number of initiatives as part of our contribution towards providing some kind of solution to some of these traffic issues in Lagos. We have the Enlightened Traffic Management Enlightenment campaign that he mentioned. We intend to roll that out as post-COVID-19. We also are working on a minimum viable product, which is basically, it's really the beginning of an electronic way of managing the traffic situation in Lagos. We haven't completely figured that out, so we'll be hoping to collaborate with everybody here and especially the Lagos State government towards coming up with that. We're hoping tentatively that it would perhaps function it mimic the functions of drive right, if you all know what drive right is, but it will help to manage the behavior of drivers on our road. So we have a bunch of experts looking at that right now. So we'll be sharing our minimum viable product, if we're lucky, sometime this year, but we'll keep you posted on that. So that's all I've got. I thank you once again. We're really grateful for the honor that you've done us today with your presence. God bless you all. Shaq, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We need to give a vote of thanks, and that will be done by the Vice Chairman of NSE Victoria Land Branch, Engineer Emeka Ibe. You can go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Shagun. On behalf of the branch chairman, Engineer John Audu, FNSE, the branch executive and SOS committees, and our entire membership, we express our profound appreciation to our distinguished discussants for two things. Firstly, for taking our time to honor our invitation to join this symposium. Secondly, doing a truly thorough job of dissecting the traffic challenge in Lagos. Then, to our attendees, you've been all awesome. The chat room is filled with your various comments, questions. We really, really appreciate the enthusiasm demonstrated, which shows that we are all really interested in ensuring this challenge is adequately resolved. So we thank you all for attending, and we look forward to your joining us when we call again for another exciting workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this. Like the Vice Chairman said, we really appreciate your presence. Let's go ahead with the directive from the NCDC. Let's also be conscious that we have to be safe, and being safe, it's our responsibility. Let's try as much as possible to adhere to the stay-at-home lockdown. Thank you very much. Do have a wonderful weekend. And for those who are Christians, have a happy Easter celebration. Thank you. God bless. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.